Namaskar, a warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is Anita Anand and with me is Renuka, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment and more. The headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi lauds India's successful fight against new wave of COVID-19, calls people's trust in indigenous vaccine as country's strength. India's exports of marine products registers a growth of 35%, while exports of ready-to-eat products increases by 24%. North Korea conducts its largest missile test since 2017. Japan, South Korea and US condemned 7th test this month. NATO General Secretary Jens Stoltenberg says alliance has no plans for combat troops in Ukraine. In United States, blizzard conditions and heavy snowfall hit East Coast. Storm Malik kills 4 in Northern Europe. China reports 34 new COVID-19 cases among Winter Olympic Games related personnel. And in Australian Open, Rafael Nadal beats Daniil Medvedev in men's singles to win record 21st Grand Slam title. As the number of COVID-19 cases are rising fast in several parts of the country, we appeal to our listeners to be vigilant and get fully vaccinated and help others, including children between 15 and 18 years, to get vaccinated. As the new Omicron variant of coronavirus is causing concern, please continue to follow the 3 simple steps to stay safe. Wear a face mask, maintain 2 gaz ki duri for social distancing, and focus on hand and face hygiene. For any COVID-related information and guidance, contact the national helpline numbers 011-2397-8046 and 1075. And now the news in detail. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has said that India is fighting the new wave of COVID with great success. Addressing the nation in his Man Ki Baat program on All India Radio on Sunday, Mr. Modi said it is a matter of pride that about 45 million children have been administered the vaccine doses till now.
ये भी गर्व की बात है कि अब तक करीब 4.5 करोड़ बच्चों ने कोरोना वैक्सीन की डोज ले ली है। 15 से 18 साल की आयु वर्ग के लगभग 60% यूथ ने 3 से 4 हफ्ते में ही टीके लगवा लिए हैं। एक और अच्छी बात ये भी है कि 20 दिन के भीतर ही 1 करोड़ लोगों ने प्रिकॉशन डोज भी ले ली है।
It is worth noting that about 1.65 billion COVID-19 vaccine doses have been administered in India so far. Mr. Modi termed the people's trust in the indigenous vaccine as the country's strength. The Prime Minister also cautioned people to be safe and added that the pace of economic activities of the country should be maintained. The Prime Minister emphasized that the enthusiasm of India's Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav is not limited to the country. Students of the School of Applied Arts and Design in Zagreb in Croatia have sent 75 postcards to the people of India and congratulated them on the Amrit Mahotsav. The Prime Minister spoke about the popularity of Indian culture and said it is a big attraction in Latin America and South America. He elaborated how Indian culture is making its mark in Argentina.
अर्जेंटीना में हमारी संस्कृति को बहुत पसंद किया जाता है। 2018 में मैंने अर्जेंटीना की अपनी यात्रा के दौरान योग के कार्यक्रम में योगा फॉर पीस में हिस्सा लिया था। यहाँ अर्जेंटीना में एक संस्था है हस्तिनापुर फाउंडेशन। आपको सुनकर के आश्चर्य होता है ना, कहाँ अर्जेंटीना और वहाँ भी हस्तिनापुर फाउंडेशन। यह फाउंडेशन अर्जेंटीना में भारतीय वैदिक परंपराओं के प्रसार में जुटा है। इसकी स्थापना 40 साल पहले एक मैडम प्रोफेसर एडा एल्ब्रेट ने की थी। आज प्रोफेसर एडा एल्ब्रेट 90 वर्ष की होने जा रही है।
The exports of marine products have registered a growth of 35% to $6.1 billion during April to December last year as compared to same period in 2020. The Commerce and Industry Ministry said in December last year, the exports of marine products touched over $720 million, registering a growth of over 28%. The overall exports of marine products in the last financial year was $5.96 billion. The ministry said top 5 export destinations are United States, China, Japan, Vietnam and Thailand. It said several export promotion schemes for fisheries have been implemented by the Marine Products Export Development Authority. Prime Minister Narendra Modi had launched the Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana in May 2020 with an array of 100 diverse activities with a budget of over 20,000 crore rupees. India's exports of ready-to-eat products have increased by 24% to $394 million in this financial year as compared to last financial year during April to October. The major destination of ready-to-eat export are United States, United Arab Emirates, Canada and Sri Lanka. Commerce and Industry Ministry said that India's export of final consumer food products such as ready-to-eat, ready-to-cook and ready-to-serve has registered a significant growth in the last 1 decade. According to the latest data of the Directorate General of Commercial Intelligence and Statistics, India exported final food products worth $5,438 billion in the last 3 financial years.
The budget session of Parliament will begin on Monday. The session will commence with President Ramnath Kovind's address to both the Houses of Parliament, assembled together at 11 a.m. in the Central Hall. After that, the copy of the President's address will be tabled in both the Houses. Economic Survey 2021-22 will be tabled on the same day in the Parliament. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will present the Union Budget for the year 2022-23 on 1st of February in the Lok Sabha, and its copy will be laid on the table of Rajya Sabha soon thereafter. This time it will be a paperless budget. Our correspondent reports that the budget session will be held amidst COVID protocol. In today's Hotspot section, we bring you a discussion on Indian economy outlook. In conversation are Siddharth, economic analyst, and Sonu Sood, AIR correspondent.
Budget session of Parliament starts tomorrow with the tabling of the Economic Survey 2021-22. The day after that, on 1st February, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will present the Union Budget for 2022-23 in the Parliament. 2 crucial national policy statements looking at the economy's performance in the current financial year and giving the outlook and expenditure revenue plan of the government for the next financial year. Siddharth, at this crucial juncture in our economic landscape, can you tell us how is our country poised on the macroeconomic front?
Well, to begin with, if you look at the macro numbers, they are looking quite good. Frankly, you have your overall economy is expected to grow at about 9.2% this year during the current financial year, that is, which is a very healthy growth rate given that you had 2 bouts of COVID infections, first starting at the beginning of the financial year, and then you had an Omicron variant towards the end of 2021, which is bound to slow down economic activity but will have only limited impact. The second wave had a bigger impact, as a result of which probably the double-digit growth rate that the economists and finance ministry were expecting when the budget was presented may not materialize. If you look at the IMF's projections also, they are also close, around 9%. So from the overall macro standpoint, the overall growth rate looks good. Now, if we look at the breakup, agriculture sector is doing as good as it can, around 4%. Services were impacted, but because people were avoiding contact services such as going to restaurant or cinema halls or even travel. But in recent months, it has picked up, although there will be a slight blip because of the Omicron variant. And manufacturing has done reasonably well. Although if you look at the overall index of industrial production, there has been a bit of slowdown towards the end of 2021. So the November reading was 1.4. So that is a little bit of concern, especially manufacturing activity. And it is also linked to demand in the system. So whether people have income levels or jobs, etc. Pressure points are obviously jobs. They haven't really bounced back the way other parameters in the economy have bounced back. So there is a bit of a lag, and that should pick up in the coming months. And the big pressure point is inflation. So if you look at the retail inflation, it is over 5.5% at the moment, although it is within the RBI comfort zone of 2 to 6%, but it is elevated. But inflation, let us not forget, is a global problem with US, UK, all of them seeing inflation which are at the highest around 4 decades.
So if we talk about the budget, how do you feel the budget will address this problem of creating jobs? You think the thrust on infrastructure, which leads to the multiplier effect and virtuous cycle of jobs, demand, investment, is it likely to continue this year also? And you feel that the government capital expenditure is likely to pull in private investment also?
Well, if you look at the indications that are coming and the demands that are coming from the corporate sector, it is clearly aimed at getting the government to continue with the capital expenditure that planned for during the current financial year. A lot of the capital expenditure has materialized, and by all accounts, sectors such as roads and highways will be given more funds in the budget when Sitaraman presents her revised estimates on Tuesday. So CapEx looks like it is here to stay, at least for this year. Already you are seeing in certain sectors where demand has been high and capacity utilization has taken place. So sectors such as steel, where there is high demand and capacity is being added by almost all the private sector players. The government companies are also trying to add capacity, and there's a lot of trust in the government towards this area. Now, if you look at the other aspect of capital expenditure, which is beyond things like roads and highways, even there, the whole idea is to invest in productive assets, because these capital expenditure results in demand for other input services like steel, cement, etc., and creates jobs. So that is a huge thrust area which is expected again in the budget, whether it is roads or airports, railways, all these sectors are expected to see enhanced allocation for capital expenditure. Now, the other positive news is that the government has more headroom to spend, in the sense that the tax collections have been good, both direct as well as indirect tax side. So to that extent, the pressure on the fiscal deficit comes down, because if you're getting revenues and even if you overshoot your expenditure, which will happen during the current financial year, given that more subsidies have been paid out and other things have happened. So the government in that sense has more headroom to spend, and the whole idea seems to be to spend on productive areas in the economy, which is to create more assets and which in turn creates more demand. The other aspect that the government is trying to do is asset monetization, which again is trying to monetize or take advantage of assets which are on the ground, and you kind of monetize it or sell them and use that money either directly or through the public sector companies to create new assets. So, which in a way is asset recycling or whatever you call it. So that seems to be the big focus that people are expecting in the budget.
And if we talk of the corporate world, credit availability, interest rates being benign, tax rates being benign after the corporate tax rate cuts, you feel there is any further room for extending support on the fiscal front?
Yes, as we just discussed, given the robust tax collections, you have the headroom to spend more. And hopefully this year, credit demand from the corporate sector will be higher. The latest data indicates that bank credit has grown by about 9%, a little more than 9%, for the fortnight ended 31st of December. So there is clearly scope for banks to enhance this credit. And that is a push that is also coming from the government, which is nudging the public sector banks certainly, and even the private sector, to be a little more lenient in giving loans. Or I would say it is nudging the banks to give loans and keeping the credit history in mind, not mindless lending, but measured lending. So that is going to happen. What has also happened is that, as we were discussing earlier, there has been excess capacity in the system. So if you had capacity to produce 100 units of anything, the demand was 60 or 70, so you had that headroom. Slowly, as the economy gets back on track and growth normalizes, you will have capacity constraints coming in, and that is when people will start investing in creating new capacity, whether it is steel, cement, automobiles, fans, whatever. So that is going to happen. Although inflation has been concerned and it is still below the 6% tolerance level, the outer tolerance zone of RBI. So RBI has been able to maintain interest rates which are helpful for supporting growth, and it has not raised interest rates, and by available indications, it is going to support this kind of a policy. Also, if you look at RBI's own projections, inflation is expected to peak during the current quarter, which is quarter ending March 31. So it will have that much extra headroom available with it to maintain this kind of an interest rate and support growth, which clearly needs to be helped, given that the projections are that next year it will slow down to around 7% or so. So one has to be both RBI and government have to work together to ensure that the conditions remain helpful to support economic activity and growth and investment.
In fact, talking about interest rates in US, we all know that they have given clear indications that they will be increasing their interest rates and withdrawing their monthly bond buying program. So you feel that from what we have read about RBI stance in their State of the Economy report, where they are saying that different central banks will have to take the local conditions into view while taking their individual decisions, there is a likelihood that despite US increasing interest rates, RBI might continue to provide monetary support to the industry by keeping the interest rates low?
Absolutely, that is what it looks like at the moment. Also, the situation in the US is different from what it is in India. If you look at the US, they have had the highest growth rate in 4 decades, and at the same time, inflation is at the highest level for around the same period. Now, in India, you are getting back on track in terms of your economic activity is just about going to be higher than the pre-pandemic level. So you clearly need to support growth. In fact, people are talking in terms of the opportunity lost because of COVID. So while you will end the year with a little more than 100 in terms of the value of output compared to the pre-pandemic level, but you have lost out on that opportunity. You should have been at 110 or 115. So you clearly need to get back to that level as quickly as possible so that you create more jobs. And in a country which has such a young population, that is the need of the hour. So you want people to be productively employed, and that can only happen when your government spends and creates conditions for the private sector to come in and spend and create more capacity and jobs.
Thank you so much for this insightful discussion, Siddharth.
Thank you, ma'am.
This is All India Radio giving you the news. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on Twitter at AIR News Alerts.
North Korea has conducted its biggest missile launch since 2017. South Korea reported that the launch took place at 7:52 local time on Sunday off North Korea's east coast. Japan, South Korea and the United States have all condemned the launch, the 7th test this month. The United Nations prohibits North Korea from ballistic and nuclear weapon tests and has imposed strict sanctions. The U.S. called on North Korea to refrain from further destabilizing acts in a statement issued by the U.S. military's Indo-Pacific Command. South Korea's National Security Council said Sunday's test was an intermediate-range ballistic missile, which would be the biggest missile tested since November 2017. Japanese and South Korean officials estimated that the missile reached an altitude of 2,000 kilometers and flew for 30 minutes to a distance of 800 kilometers. Finally, it landed in the Sea of Japan. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has called for a balanced approach with regard to rising tensions over Ukraine. He said the alliance has no plans to deploy combat troops in Ukraine. Stoltenberg said the situation posed a real danger and that nations should continue to work for a political solution. Russia had placed about 1 lakh troops, tanks, artillery and missiles near Ukraine's border, but denies it plans to invade the former Soviet Republic, which borders both Russia and the European Union. Meanwhile, Russia's foreign minister claims that NATO wants to pull Ukraine into the alliance amid escalating tensions over NATO expansion and fears that Russia is preparing to invade Ukraine. In comments on state television Sunday, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has also challenged NATO's claim to be a purely defensive structure. Russia's massing of an estimated 1 lakh troops near the border with Ukraine has brought increasingly strong warnings from the West that Moscow intends to invade. The head of Russia's Security Council, Nikolai Patrushev, on Sunday rejected Western warnings about a planned invasion.
Pakistan and United States seem to struggle to maintain a cordial relationship after enjoying years of warm relationship. Their ties are now at crossroads. Washington does not know where Pakistan figures in its Indo-Pacific strategy, and Pakistan does not know how much space it has for the U.S. in its relations with China, as reported by Dawn. Coming to contemporary times, the U.S. President Joe Biden has not had a direct conversation with Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan from the time the former took office in Washington last year. Further, US-China tensions have created a schism in Pakistan's strategic thinking, and its decision to skip President Biden's Democracy Summit last December, followed by the offer to be a bridge between the US and China, signals Pakistan's desire to be in both camps, but also its uncertainty about Washington's response. On the other hand, even though the US-Pakistan relationship is more than 6 decades old, neither side has a well-defined view of the other and its policies. They have thrice engaged with each other, each time prompted by Washington's short-term need for Islamabad's cooperation to serve its critical security and strategic interests, and Pakistan's long-term need for US economic support and strategic patronage. In the United States, blizzard conditions and heavy snowfall have battered parts of the East Coast, sparking transport chaos and power cuts for thousands. 5 states declared an emergency hours before piles of snow and high winds blasted the area on Saturday. Some areas of Massachusetts have seen as much as 2.5 feet of snow. Nearly 6,000 US flights were cancelled across the weekend. With multiple blizzard warnings in effect, cities like New York and Boston bore the brunt of the storm. Residents in towns and cities across the eastern seaboard were urged to stay home and avoid all unnecessary travel in the whiteout conditions. In Long Island, officials said a woman had been found dead in her car.
A powerful winter storm swept through northern Europe over the weekend, killing at least 4 people. It is destroying houses and cars, closing bridges and causing flooding and halting transport, while leaving thousands of households without electricity. Storm Malik was advancing in the Nordic region on Sunday, bringing strong gusts of wind and extensive rain and snowfall in Denmark, Finland, Norway and Sweden. In Scotland, a boy and a 60-year-old woman were killed on Saturday by falling trees as strong winds battered northern parts of Britain. Wind gusts of more than 160 km per hour have been reported in parts of Scotland, causing widespread disruption to transport and power cuts to tens of thousands of homes. Danish media reported that a 78-year-old woman died from severe injuries after falling in strong winds. In Germany, a man was killed after being hit by a billboard that was loosened by the storm. Severe damage to houses, cars and boats, among other things, were reported in Norway, while heavy snowfall throughout Finland caused road crashes and disrupted bus and train traffic in parts of the country. The Bangladesh government will provide COVID vaccine to children above the age of 12 and booster doses to people above the age of 40. Health Minister Zahid Malik told media in Dhaka on Sunday that earlier school children about 12 were provided COVID vaccines, but now it will be provided to all children above the age of 12. The government has also decided to allow booster doses for people above the age of 40. The minister said that Bangladesh has 90 million doses of vaccine in stock to provide vaccination to an additional number of people.
Russia has confirmed over 121,000 new COVID-19 cases in the past 24 hours, up from 113 and 122 the day before, and 1,617 deaths, the Federal Response Center said on Sunday. In total, 228 new cases were detected. In the past 24 hours, 617 people have died, the center said. In addition, the response center said that 9,883 people infected with COVID-19 have been hospitalized over the past 24 hours, which shows a 32.2% decrease when compared to the day before. 34 new COVID-19 infections were detected among Olympics-related personnel, the Beijing 2022 Winter Olympic Games Organizing Committee said on Sunday. It includes Poland's short track medal hopeful Natalia Maliszewska. Of these, 13 were athletes or team officials who tested positive after arriving at the airport on Saturday. The Winter Olympics is to take place from 4 to 20th of February. Of the total infections, 23 were among the new airport arrivals, while 11 were people already in the closed-loop bubble that separates event personnel from the public to try to curb the spread of infections. The loop allows Games participants to move freely between their accommodations and Olympic venues on official transport, but they are not allowed to move freely in the city. All game stakeholders, including media and staff, are also tested daily. Ballistic is the 8th Polish athlete to have tested positive and has gone into isolation. The Polish Olympic Committee said on Sunday she joins infected fellow speed skaters Natalia Zerwonka, Magdalena Soskon and Marek Kania in isolation.
In tennis, Rafael Nadal has defeated Daniil Medvedev in the Australian Open men's singles final and clinched a record 21st Grand Slam title. 6-seed Nadal defeated world number 2 Medvedev in a 5-set thriller 2-6, 6-7, 6-4, 6-4, 7-5 at the Rod Laver Arena in Melbourne to lift Australian Open title on Sunday. After being 2 sets down, Nadal scripted an incredible comeback to clinch his first Grand Slam major since the 2020 French Open triumph. With this victory, the Spaniard has become the first man to win 21 Grand Slam titles. The win also helped Nadal overtake Roger Federer and Novak Djokovic with his historic 21 Grand Slam title. On Saturday, world number 1 Ashley Barty won her first Australian Open title after defeating Danielle Collins of the United States in the women's singles final at the Rod Laver Arena. Now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. The New York Times headlines that President Putin has long tried to balance Europe. Now he is working to reset it. Washington Post notes that Britain says nothing is off the table on Russia sanctions amid escalating threat to Ukraine. Financial Times reports that Johnson considers offering NATO more British troops in Estonia. The Globe and Mail quoting UN says nearly 2,000 children recruited by Yemen's Houthi rebels have died in fighting. The Guardian reports that Portugal is voting in a snap general election. The Japan Times writes that Prime Minister Fumio Kishida under pressure to again declare COVID emergency in Tokyo. Now let us have a look at some brief news reported in press about China. ANI reports that 243 global groups call for action against China over human rights violation as Beijing Winter Olympic nears. ANI also writes that a Tibet advocacy group called on Beijing Games broadcaster NBC to go beyond business. They have called on NBC to take in China's coercion in Tibet in their coverage of the Games. Radio Taiwan International reports that Lithuania will stand by the name of the Taiwanese Representative Office. Lithuanian Member of Parliament Matas Maldekis said this in an interview when asked about the possibility of a name change due to pressure from China.
Let us take a brief look at some important news covered by press on Nepal. The Kathmandu Post writes that a meeting of the 5 partners of the ruling alliance Nepali Congress, the Communist Party of Nepal, Maoist Center, the CPN Unified Socialist and the Janata Samajwadi Party and the Rashtriya Jan Morcha agreed on conducting the local elections by mid-June. This, however, is around more than a month later than the Election Commission proposed dates. A quick look at the headlines once again. Prime Minister Narendra Modi lauds India's successful fight against a new wave of COVID-19, calls people's trust in indigenous vaccine as country's strength. India's exports of marine products registers a growth of 35%, while exports of ready-to-eat products increases by 24%. North Korea conducts its largest missile test since 2017. Japan, South Korea and US condemned 7th test this month. NATO General Secretary Jens Stoltenberg says alliance has no plans for combat troops in Ukraine. In the United States, blizzard conditions and heavy snowfall hit East Coast. Storm Malik kills 4 in Northern Europe. China reports 34 new COVID-19 cases among Winter Olympic Games related personnel. And in Australian Open tennis, Rafael Nadal beats Daniil Medvedev in men's singles to win record 21st Grand Slam title. And now before we end, let's listen to Mahatma Gandhi's favorite bhajan, Vaishnav Jan, by artists from UAE.
Vaishnav Jan ko tene kahin je पीजे पराई जाने रे पर दुख उपकार करे कोई मन अभिमान आने रे वैष्णव जन.
And with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.